This is the Roller Coaster Podcast, and I'm your host, Lucy Q. Life is a wild ride. It has twists and turns. It's scary, exciting, and downright fun. So throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride.
Joining me today is Michael Mojo, founder of the Mojo Human Performance Institute, mindset and mental performance coach. Michael has been featured alongside Dr. Joe Dispenza, Grant Cardonne, Gary Vee, and Barbara Cocoran. But to get here, Michael had to overcome many challenges, including ADD, dyslexia, bullying, self-hatred, and feeling like a failure. Through sheer determination and perseverance, Michael proved the naysayers wrong and started building the life of his dreams. Hi, Michael.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Well,
Morning for
got
you.
this one ready. It's morning for me, night for you.
Evening for you. Yeah, I always get a kick when I'm talking to people in Australia. I said to my husband, I'm like, it's really cool. It's evening for me and it's morning for them. And he looks at me and goes, yeah, you do realize the earth is round.
Well,
thanks.
not to some people apparently, but
well, no, that's a whole other rabbit hole. But I always think it's pretty neat. So you overcame an awful lot to get where you are, and I really appreciate where you're coming from because our son, we've two, he's our youngest, he's now 19, was diagnosed with a really severe form of dyslexia when he was in grade 2. I think he's about in the second percentile. So as a parent of a child with dyslexia, I saw firsthand the challenges of not only getting through school and a day navigating his world, but also having to advocate for this silent, I don't like calling it a disability, the silent challenge that people can't even see that's there. So for you, how were your early years growing up navigating, these challenges that you had?
now that I look back, interesting. It was back then I hated school. I didn't enjoy it. I actually just did a video that we sort of recorded with our videographer, and he was just asking me questions about growing up, and a lot of stuff came up that I hadn't really spoken about or even thought of for a long time. And something that I mentioned was that I just really hated school that much that I remember my mum dropping me off in, I think it was like grade 1 in school, and just walking into school so that she would be happy that I was at school, and then walking down the back of the oval because I just didn't want to be there. And I'd sit down the back of the oval for a couple of hours until someone would find me, and then I'd get dragged back into class because I just didn't enjoy it. It wasn't my thing. I found that I enjoyed connecting with people and I enjoyed learning. I've always been very inquisitive, but I just really struggled to, number one, sit still for extended periods of time. And number two, I think that learning was just a bit of a challenge for me, but there were things that I could learn really, really well. And there were things that I didn't learn really, really well. But yeah, so I think that was quite challenging. And then trying to fit in with the other kids, not being able to fit in. Yeah, I think school's challenging for most people.
Yeah, I hated school.
Yeah.
I didn't have a good reason. I didn't like it that much. I couldn't wait to get out. I really couldn't.
Yeah. I've got my 20-year reunion coming up this year. And lots of people have been messaging me on social media like, you're coming along. And I thought, well, I didn't go to the, we have like our formal here. I'm not sure what you call it.
Like a prom?
Yeah. Prom. So we had one in grade 10, grade 11 and grade 12. I'm not sure if the schooling system's the same over there, but anyway, like the end of our high school years. And I missed everyone. And then I showed my videographer, I went back and grabbed out my yearbooks, and the majority of the pictures for school had Michael Johnson absent because I just didn't like school. So I'd do whatever I could to avoid him.
Yeah. Well, go to your reunion. I actually somehow ended up planning our high school 25th anniversary and the reunion rather. And I was scared shitless to go, even though I was the one organizing it. I was so scared. But then I started talking to people. They were texting me, and I found out they were just as scared.
Mm,
And then I would just realize, you know what? We're all just people. We all have the same fears. We all have the same setbacks. And when we got there, I think we all just had a good time because we realized, yeah, we're all in our mid 40s. Who the hell cares?
yep.
But but for me, I don't find school actually sets kids up properly because one, I don't understand how you want to make a little kid sit at a desk for 6 hours a day. That doesn't make sense to me. And two, it doesn't do anything to play to your strengths.
Yeah. When you look back at the education system, though, that we're currently in at the moment in the rote learning system, I guess it was developed to in the industrial era, really in the modern form that we have it in, to make workers and to train kids to get jobs. And so that system's still very effective at doing so. You know, a lot of people go through school. They, especially in Australia, they either get told to go and get a trade or to go to university or college. Um, and that system does a great job at producing workers. What it doesn't do, though, is it normally doesn't suit people like myself that are very entrepreneurial. You know, I want to get out there. I want to create things. I want to do things. I don't like working to a schedule. I like waking up when I want to wake up. I like going to bed when I want to go to bed. But in saying that, I normally am up early and I go to bed late and I work flat out all day and I work 7 days a week. And I've been doing that for the last 10 to 15 or so years. So that system doesn't work for me, and it just never has. I'm probably, I think there will be people out there who understand this, but I'm an unemployable person. I just can't be employed by somebody else. I love working with others, but I just don't like working for others. And that's not just because I don't like working. I love working. It's just that the way that I think and the way that I do things tends to sort of be different than the way that we've been educated that things work. So yeah, I think it does the job that it's needed to. Whether it's still relevant in this era, I'm not sure. One of my clients owns the largest group of childcare centres here in South Australia, where I'm from. And one of the key things that he says is, like, if you look at the research, most children really shouldn't start thinking about things like mathematics or English or like strategic learning up until around about 6, 7, 8 years of age, because they really need to develop that creative part of the brain, unless they're living within their values and they're very set on those things and their parents are okay with it and they can just live that thing. But that's probably going to be the only thing that they're good at. I think the schooling system tends to generalize quite a lot. It gives us lots of stuff that we need to learn. Whether it's effective for people to live a great life, I'm not sure. Okay, I've got family members of mine now who still can't really even read or write properly, but they've created multi-million-dollar businesses. So I don't know how we judge people for how successful they're going to be or how effective they're going to be at living life. I'm not really too sure.
I don't think anyone can judge that because ultimately it comes down to the person's motivations and desires. And if they tap into that purpose and they find that thing that fuels them and creates that flow, you can't you can't see that in, a 16-year-old kid in school. You don't know.
Mhm.
You don't know.
Yeah, I get a lot of parents come to my events, and we get a fair few of them with things like, well, the first thing that came to mind was Asperger's, but that's, I don't think they call it that anymore because it's just a spectrum, I guess, the autism spectrum. But I think children tend to bring up parents' insecurities within their own life. And I won't get into the biological reasons for that, but it tends to bring up, from what I've seen, I'm not a parent, but kids tend to bring up parents' insecurities in order for them to deal with it, but also in order for the child to learn and progress through life or potentially evolve. And we get a lot of parents who come in and they say, my child's not going to get anywhere in life. They've been, they're going to struggle to fit in. They're going to struggle to, adapt. and I understand that, and I understand their concerns. But at the same time, I haven't found a human that's not a genius. It's just that their genius is in something that doesn't sort of fit into the norms. And a lot of kids with, who are on the spectrum or who have ADD or learning difficulties, they're normally very gifted at certain things, but they're very much challenged in lots of other areas, as are most people. And I think one of the greatest gifts that most people with those, and I won't even call them disabilities because they're not, those challenges in the schooling system, what I find is that if you can help them hone in on those skill sets that they're very good at, they tend to be very, very focused, very, very driven, and they tend to achieve at a very high level. But when society tends to disperse their greatness and try to make them fit in and try to make them be really good at lots of different areas, they really are challenged with that. But then I think people who go through school who are very adaptable and can do well at lots of different subjects through school may not do that well at life because they're not that focused. They're very scattered in their way of thinking, and they don't know, should I go down this path? Should I do this thing? And so they have lots and lots of, distractions that pull them off track. Some people who are great at socializing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to do extremely well at life unless they find a career where they can get paid extremely well to socialize. So it all depends. Some people spend the majority of their life trying to socialize and trying to connect with others, but work a 9-to-5 job that they don't really enjoy, that pulls them away from their greatness of connection. And so now they've got a job that they feel frustrated and stuck in, that they don't really get paid that well for socializing and connecting. So they can actually end up just as off track, if not worse, than that kid at school who had ADD, dyslexia, was on the spectrum and was just super focused and really good at one skill set, and anything outside of that, they just really sucked at. But that's their gift.
And that's it, is that we all have a gift, but we have to find a way to uncover it. So for you, how did you go from being Michael who hated school to being Michael Mojo?
It was a long journey, and at first it was very organic. I didn't really even think about it. My mother was 17 when she had me. My dad was 19. They had a lot of challenges that were going on as well. We didn't come from any sort of wealth. My mum, her family were relatively poor, and so was my dad's. And they just worked really hard. I think they wanted to prove themselves. The rest of my mother's siblings, she's got 3 brothers and sisters, they all went to college or university and did extremely well in their careers. And mum just worked. And the same as dad, he always worked 2 jobs. So I grew up watching that. And I was also very inquisitive. So I asked lots and lots of questions, which I think got me in trouble at school quite a lot as well. But just really inquisitive. And I remember this one night just sitting there looking up at the sky. We were sort of away in the country, and looking up at the sky and just wondering, like, why are we here and why do we do what we do, and asking those types of questions. And never really thought about it, but I remember that moment. It's etched in my mind. Then as life went on, at 15, I was expelled from school. I used to get picked on quite a lot. I had bright red hair, I had freckles, white pasty skin, and I was overweight. And so I got picked on quite a lot. And when I was really young at school, I used to cry. I used to get really upset. And then because of that normally doesn't stop kids from picking on you. In fact, it makes it worse. Then I learned how to fight. That if kids pick on me and I just bash them, then they stop picking on me. And so that was my coping mechanism. So going through school was quite challenging because I'd still get picked on quite a lot. I didn't fit into groups. I wasn't in the smart kid group because my parents were young. They would go to parties every weekend and have fun, and we'd go into the country and would do motorbike or dirt bike riding and race cars, where all my friends were playing sports like Aussie rules football, football or soccer. They were doing other stuff that kids do, whereas I didn't fit into those groups. So I sort of was a bit of an outcast. So when I got expelled from school at 15 for fighting, I knew that from what I'd been taught, which was you have to get a good education in order to go to university or college, and then you could go get a good career. And if you get a good career, you make lots of money. And when you make lots of money, you set yourself up for life, and then you get married and have kids and do all that sort of stuff. So at 15, I thought, I'm never going to get anywhere in life. There's no point in living. So I was getting ready to attempt suicide. And in that moment, I realized that I couldn't make anyone else happy. I was just here to do me. And I wanted to go back to school and finish off my high school education. But at the same time, I wasn't doing it anymore for my parents. I was just doing it for me. And I knew I wasn't going to do well, but I would just do well enough. So I ended up doing that. And from 13 years of age as well, I always had a job. I always worked after hours, part-time. I would go and work at nighttime, in the middle of the night, cleaning office blocks and so on, because my parents didn't have money. So I used to get picked on for being poor. In fact, I had a nickname called POV, which was short for poverty. So that the kids used to call me POV. And so I worked so that I could go buy basketball shoes like the other kids had. And then I ended up finishing school, ended up becoming a diesel fitter or a diesel mechanic working on mining equipment here in South Australia. We had a big mining boom going on and not enough mechanics. So I decided to go down that path, and I love figuring out how things worked. I love cars. And so I just put two and two together and went, maybe this is the career. Started doing that and discovered pretty quickly that most people went to work and it wasn't about the money, which I thought it was. I was taught when you make money, then you get to buy things, and buying things makes you happy. But I saw the opposite. These people were in the maybe top 5% of money earners in the country, and they were miserable. They'd get to work every day, moan, complain. They were working in the outback or the middle of Australia, and they were earning extremely good amounts of money. They'd work 2 weeks on and then 2 weeks off and fly in and fly out from the mine sites, but they were miserable. They had boats, cars, jet skis, motorbikes, all of those really cool things, but they just weren't happy. And that's when I started realizing this wasn't the career for me. So I decided to switch. And once I finished my apprenticeship or my training to be qualified, I just thought, that's it, I'm out, I'm done. And the day I got signed off was the day I quit and I became a personal trainer. So I was studying after hours for 18 months, which was very scary for me, especially being told that I was dyslexic and having learning difficulties. Going back to school as what I perceived back then as an adult and doing adult education was extremely hard. I'd work all day and then go to night school. But I did it. And then I realized that the thing that I loved more than anything was helping people. And that started my journey. So I was working with people's physical bodies. Then I realized that most people, they were okay at exercising and going to the gym, but they didn't know how to eat properly. So I studied nutrition. Then I found a lot of them had injuries, and that was stopping them from training. So then I went and studied kinesiology. Then from there, I decided to leave the gym industry and go and work in a medical center with doctors and physiotherapists and chiropractors. And I was a sponge. I just kept learning and learning and learning. And it was that one, when I was working in the medical center, I realized that everyone knows what to do. They just don't do it. And it's what happens in between their ears that's the biggest problem. So that's where I started studying mindset, psychology. And since then, I think it's been about around 11 or 12 years. All I've done is just travel around the world and study as much as I possibly can from people way smarter than I am in lots of different fields. And I integrate all that knowledge to give people tools that they can use and hopefully benefit them.
And I think you touched on something very important there, where everything seemed to come together for you when you started to realize your purpose. And then, any education or any learning that you had to do wasn't a challenge because you knew your why. You knew why you were doing it, and it had meaning, it had purpose for you. And you probably were also in those moments when you were learning and juggling all of these different things, you were probably in flow with what you were doing. Like, time would probably pass and you probably didn't know it, simply because you were enjoying everything so much.
Yeah, I don't know back then that I realized that I enjoyed it. There was another big incident as well. When I was 21, my best friend's 3-year-old niece that we used to look after was killed in a car accident. And it made me realize that life can be taken away very quickly. And a lot of us won't know when that is. It'll happen. We might not even know. So every day we're a day closer to death. And that scared me so much that all I wanted to do was to do something that I thought had meaning and that I sort of enjoyed. And that was about it. But in saying that, there was a lot of struggle, like starting our own business. We were living on baked beans and eggs almost, every day because we just couldn't afford it. I convinced my wife to leave her corporate career and to come and work with me in the business. And that year we made $30,000, and that almost sent us broke. So there was lots and lots of challenges, but I just kept thinking, like, what do I have the potential of becoming, or what am I really capable of? And I knew that death was always in the back of my mind. Like, would I regret it at the end of my life if I didn't have a crack now? So I don't know that I was in flow, and I don't even know if I'd even thought about my purpose. I just knew that I was scared of dying, and I knew that I was really scared of looking back at my life and realizing that I never had the opportunity to become the person that I thought I could. So that's what drove me for a while. And then that's when I started getting really into the mindset stuff, I realized that there was more to it. There was a lot more into the purpose and the mission and the values, a lot of the stuff that, I teach now. And it's over the years, it's become a lot more fulfilling.
So in working with people in discovering, what their mindsets are and uncovering their values and beliefs, what do you find is the biggest challenge or the most common challenge that people are encountering that is making them stuck in where they are in their life?
It's a great question. I think what I've seen from studying and working with children is that kids normally know who they are from a very young age. So if you watch a child, and I learned this from a close friend of mine, Dr. John D. Martini. He said that if you look at a single-celled organism such as bacteria, it moves away from things that it perceives challenges its life or challenges existence, and moves towards things that it perceives enhances its existence. Now, children from a very young age don't have the ability to think through things, overthink things, and have other people project their values onto them or implant their values onto the child. So a child knows from a very young age that if it likes to do coloring in or drawing, it will do that. If it wants to go outside and play in the mud and the rain, it will do that. So it tends to move towards things that it perceives enhances the quality of its life. And every child starts expressing its values from a very, very young age. In fact, day one, day one, child starts expressing its values. But then it has to start adapting to cultural norms and society norms. So mum, dad, whoever the parental figure is, the mother figure, the father figure, start projecting their values onto the child. And what the parents perceive will enhance the quality of that child's life. And they, without realizing it, they're number one, they're doing what they believe is best for the child, but also it can be at the detriment to the child's own value system. So as a child grows up, it starts taking on more and more of these implanted values from the mother figure, the father figure, but then it starts to be family members, then it goes to school, and then it gets their friends and their peers and the teachers. So what I find is that first off, the child is very aware of its own values and what it likes and what it doesn't like and what it wants to move away from and what it wants to move towards. But as it starts to get older, it starts to get very confused and conflicted because it wants to do one thing, but it's told that they can't do that one thing. So then now they start creating internal noise and chaos and what is known as distress, because there's two types of stress. There's distress and eustress. Eustress is the stress that you take on when you do something you love, which is within your value structure. And then there's distress, which is outside of that, which causes us a lot of internal conflict and chaos and stress. It promotes high levels of stress hormone and so on. So I think that we have to lose ourselves as a teenager or even as a young child in order to find ourselves again. And I find that part of the fun journey working with adults is helping them rediscover who they are. It's not that, like, I get people who come to my events and I do a lot of podcasts and stuff, and people say, if you had to give your top tips to success, what would it be? Apart from know yourself, other than that, there are no keys to success. There is what makes you successful, and discover. Actually, I shouldn't even use the word discovery. I've got to be careful with my language. But rediscovering who you are, I think, is one of the greatest gifts. And that's the thing that makes someone successful. If I told people what my routine is, now I'm 38 years of age this year. I'm not a father. Okay. I don't have kids, I love working. I love my career. I love what I do. And I love traveling. I love helping people. I love exercising. They're the things that I love. Now, to a person with a high value of family, they would hate my life. So it would be, I think it would be damaging to tell people that they should live my life. What I love to do is to help them rediscover their life and the life that they love to live. There are plenty of parents out there who have kids because they get told you have to have kids. But when they have kids, they don't enjoy it. It's not their thing. They do it because now they feel like they have to be parents instead of I would love to be a parent. But there are plenty of parents out there who love to be parents. So I think it's that rediscovery of who we are and breaking away from those norms are what makes people great. So, I think that's the thing that stops most people living a great life is just those implanted values. But I think that everyone goes through it to some level, different people to different extents. The more we take on other people's opinions, views, then the more we judge ourselves. The more we judge ourselves, the more we judge others. The more critical we become of ourselves and others, the more we feel bad when we're criticized. And so all of this stuff tends to distort our own greatness. I think rediscovering that is important. And if you don't mind, if I can share a quote, there was a quote that I read from Michelangelo, and it was in regards to when he created the statue of David. And apparently someone asked him, they said, how do you carve such beautiful structures? And he said, all I do is I chip away all the rock that's not David. Now, to me, that was just a beautiful understanding of life, because it's not, my job isn't to teach people how to be successful, and it's not to teach people how to achieve. I can do that because there are commonalities that do help people to do that. And there are common patterns of behavior and common patterns of thinking and common structures that will allow people to do that in different areas of their life. But the number one most important thing that I can tell a person is just to be yourself and to chip away all the crap that's not you, so that you keep rediscovering who you are as a person. And the more you do that, the more fulfilled you are, the more you love the life that you've created, the more grateful you are, the more inspired you are, the more your energy comes up, the better your posture is, the more balanced your physiology. And there we go. Now we're starting to live a great life instead of living a life that we feel like we're trapped by.
So if somebody's listening and they're thinking, yeah, I'd like to rediscover who I am, how do they begin to chip away that shit that's built up over time, that's masked who they really are?
Okay, the first part of cleaning out if you're swimming in a pool of shit in your life, I mean, I've got a couple of quotes that I think get shared quite a lot. The first one is, if your life looks like shit, just take your head out of your ass to start with. So realize that you're the problem, but you're also the solution. So there's no point beating yourself up and thinking, I've fucked up life and, I'm a piece of shit and I'm not going to get anywhere, because that sort of stuff does not help. And a lot of people do that. They beat themselves up because they compare themselves to others and think, I've got a friend who's the same age as me and they're doing so much better, and they look happy because of their Instagram pictures and, all of that stuff. And it makes them feel so bad. So they just give up. Now, I meet 60-year-olds and they say, Michael, my life's over. And I go, hang on. In Australia, the average life expectancy is 84. You've got 24 years to go. Don't even start thinking like that. The first year is going to suck because it'll feel like you get nowhere. The second year, you'll feel like you've gotten a little bit. The third year, you'll feel like you're getting a little bit further. But by year 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, your whole life will be completely transformed and you won't even know the person that you were. So it's a time thing. And in this day and age, we live in a world of immediate gratification. I can hop on Netflix and watch what I want with no ads, and I can buy stuff on Amazon immediately. So we can do really whatever we want at the click of a button right now. So a lot of people in our society have lost patience. And it's that patience that makes someone great. And I had to learn this the hard way, because at 23, 24, 25 years of age, all of my friends are getting married, having kids, buying their first home. And here I am in a career that I was doing okay. And in personal training, I was doing well, but it wasn't the lifestyle that I wanted. I was still going out and partying with friends and enjoying my life in that way. But I also felt like I was getting left behind and like I wouldn't get anywhere in life. Then at the age of around 30, actually, I remember my 30th birthday. And sorry, I will answer the question. I know I'm giving it in metaphors, but I think that this will help a lot of people because of that pressure that they create. At 30 years of age, I remember my mum asking me, what do you want to do for your birthday? And I said nothing because I was depressed. I thought, you know, I'm 30, I haven't achieved anything. I walked away from a lucrative career in personal training to go do the mindset stuff, and the business hadn't taken off. My wife and myself were struggling through it. You know, we're eating baked beans and eggs every day. And I knew that I had something great inside of me, and I was comparing myself to that. And it just, I just was in turmoil. Anyway, my parents bought me a ticket to go on holiday because I hadn't been on holiday in like 6 years. And I just thought, you know, this sucks. I haven't achieved anything. I'm 30, like life's over. And then at around 31, the business took off around just after my birthday. At around 31, maybe 31, in between 31 and 32, we created our first $1 million year in the business. Now, if I just gave up then, I was almost one step away from that. And now a lot of people come to me, I get a lot of people come to me and they go, wow, what was it like being so young and making that much money? And I'm like, back then it didn't feel like I was young, because the comparative I had were my peers that I hung around at my age, and they seem to have so much more. Now a lot of them come to me and they go, you're crushing it in life. How did you get this far? And I was like, if you only knew what between 20 and 30 was like, I dedicated my life to learning, not earning. But at 30, that's when I realized that I had to turn all that knowledge into something else. And so that's where it took off. So I think that the first step is breaking away from those comparatives and just realizing that it's a process. And that every day it's a process of just discovery. Life should be fun. It shouldn't be like you start comparing yourself and what everyone else is doing. You've got 8 billion people to do that with. You will never win. Okay, there's 8 billion people on the planet, and we're all interconnected now through this internet thing, right? So there's always going to be someone who's better, slimmer, leaner, more wealthy. You know, their family looks like they're more happy because they've got more smiles on Instagram. And so that comparative is going to make you feel like shit. You're never going to find yourself. So my first suggestion is, number one, stop the comparatives and stop looking at that and just go, right, I get to go and discover things. Okay, I remember the whole Easter egg hunt and the idea of treasure hunts when I was a kid, or going and finding lollies in or candy in my grandmother's cupboard. Now that was an experience. If we woke up in the morning and treated life like that little treasure hunt where we got to discover just one thing about ourselves each day, within a year, we've discovered 365 new things about ourselves that we didn't know. You multiply that over 10 years and things compound as well. You're a completely different person. And I guarantee you within 10 years, you will probably be way further forward than what you've ever imagined. But at first it feels like nothing. Okay, it's just that step. And so I think really understanding what you really love, and there's a difference. If you look at the word passion, and these days a lot of people confuse passion. The original etymology of the word passion means to suffer. And a lot of the great authors like Aristotle and Plato, they use the word passion as though like you want to avoid your passions, because the original etymology is to suffer. If you look at emotional states, what goes up has to come back down. So when we chase our passions, they're exciting, they're fun, they're you know, we get this thrill, but that's a massive dopamine hit, an adrenaline hit, and all of those hormones stimulate. But when we're stimulated, we go up and we've got to crash back down again, and there's got to be a correction. So it depends what you want. Do you want a stable life, or do you want an exciting life with depressions? So I prefer stability in my life. I used to like the big peaks and the big troughs because it's fun, but it also sucks and it's really painful. So I much prefer I like the idea of love, because if you love someone, not only do you take their upsides, you take their downsides. Anyone with kids knows that they're your dream and your nightmare, all intertwined into one, right? And you love them. So when we do what we love, you have to understand that it's your dream and your nightmare. It's your goods and your bads. All of those things are balanced when you do what you love. It's challenging, but at the same time, it's rewarding. That's what you want to find, not the passions that are supposed to be exciting and fun. You know, I don't wake up every day and bounce out of bed and go, wow, I can't wait to take on the world today. I just get up and I go, I'm doing my thing. This is what I love. It's what I'm born to do. But is it easy? No. Most days I feel like I've been in a boxing match. But if I get to raise my hands in the air at the end of the day and I feel like I'm a winner, I want to get back in that ring again tomorrow. So I think that's part of it. And then just looking at, if I could dedicate my life to doing something extremely challenging, what would that challenging thing be? Okay, I think in the personal development industry and in the psychology industry and mental health space, there's this idea of doing something that's fun and exciting. I think that sets people up for massive failure, because when they start doing what they really love to do, they realize that it's not those things. It's not fun. It's not exciting. And it's not any of that. It's rewarding. But from what I remember, you said you've got kids. Is that
Yeah,
how many
we've got, well, I call them kids, but they're with two boys. They're 19 and 22.
Okay, so young adults. Now, I would assume that it's extremely rewarding now at the age that they are, seeing what they've come and all the stuff, all the stuff that you've had to go through in order to develop them into the young adults that they are now. And I'm assuming there's still lots of challenges, but it can be extremely rewarding. But I also know from dealing with thousands of parents over the years that it's extremely challenging. And there's times where you just wish or you think, what did I get myself into? Like, it shouldn't be this hard and it shouldn't be this complicated.
Oh yeah. There is definitely times when you're, you love your kids, but they can drive you insane sometimes. And it doesn't make a difference how old they get. You think that you've sorted everything out and they're on their way, but no, they still need you. Stuff still comes up, but we love them.
And that's exactly what you want to find in your own life when you're doing what you love. So I don't necessarily teach people to go and find out what they would, what their passions are and go and chase after that thing that's exciting and you jump out of bed every day to do, because that's not what it is. You want to find, and I find that asking this question is the better way of asking, what's the thing that you would love to do that's extremely challenging, but you'd keep doing it for the rest of your life because you love to do it? And when you ask someone a question like that, it gives them a different frame of reference as to what their gifts are, more than chasing a fantasy or chasing an idea. I think it's like the difference between Hollywood love versus a real relationship, right?
Yeah.
One looks amazing, but if you compare your relationship to the Hollywood relationship, your relationship's always going to suck. Okay. But the truth is that the Hollywood relationships and the people who act those things in most cases normally have the worst relationships, but also as well, that's not a real relationship. A real relationship is extremely challenging, but extremely rewarding. And you've got to learn a lot. You've got to adapt. You've got to change. And you have to try to understand different people, and your career needs to be the same and living the life that you love.
And for anybody that thinks, like you said, that guy that was 60 that said that, I'm too old, my life is over. I didn't actually start to figure out my own life until it's going to be in the last couple of years. Sure, I, got married and had kids and had jobs and all of that, but I didn't really dig down and start to figure out who I am until recently. I just turned 48. And yes, I've discovered what I want to do and I love what I do, but it can also be really, really hard. I'm having to figure out stuff that I don't have a clue what I'm doing. Nobody around me has a clue what I'm doing. I'm Googling everything and YouTubing and trying to figure it all out. And those moments can really suck. But when you figure something out and you're like, oh my God, that's amazing. And it gives you that fuel to keep going. But you were saying that like the timelines about the first year, it's this, the second year is, yeah, it does. It takes time. But the gift is when you can reach those milestones and you can look back and you can say, oh my God, I can't even remember who that person was. Because for me, that person was 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago now. And she was scraping the bottom of shit barrel. And I had two choices in that moment. I could either look down and drown or look up at the possibilities. And ultimately that's what we all have. And if you can find the courage to, as you say, chip away at that stone and find out what it is that you love, the world becomes a completely different place. Your life becomes completely different.
I agree. I also think something that I have noticed a little bit lately, and I don't know if this is the same for everybody, is that as you get a little bit older as well, you start to think a little bit more and a little bit more differently about life. And I think that that's every stage through life, there's a gift and also a massive challenge. And when you're young, you don't really, or younger, you don't really think about death and what your maybe not so much like what your purpose is in life and how you want to be remembered when you're not here, and what do you want to leave as like, maybe not a legacy, but just like, what do you want to leave, whether it's great kids or, and I think that as you start to age a little bit, you start thinking more like that, and that starts to really fine tune and cut away all the crap. And I think the more scared you are of the idea of death, the easier it is to just say no to things. The easier it is to say, look, I'm sorry, I would love to help you, but this isn't my path. And you start becoming more firm because you realize that there's a consequence to trying to please everybody all the time. Whereas when you're younger, maybe you please too many people and, you know, you're trying to fit in too much. Whereas, you know, I remember, I love talking to people who are a little bit older, and they're quite happy to, you know, fight in an elevator if they need to, like, or, you know, like a lift or something, because they just don't care anymore. Like, it's, you want to judge me? I don't care. Like, I'm close to the end anyway, like whatever. So they get into this state of just not really caring so much. They probably still do, but not as much. So I think the trap when you're young is that you care too much about what other people think, and you care too much maybe about fitting in and doing all the right things for everybody else. Whereas when you age, that idea of like, you know, time's running out, I think that starts to get people really decisive and a lot clearer. And I think they stop worrying so much about the fear of judgment, so they can actually have greater success in a shorter time period the older they are. Whereas the younger somebody is, even though they've got more time, they waste a lot of time and can treat it not as important. So I think that there is benefits and drawbacks. And that's why, you know, when someone who's in their 50s or in their 60s comes to me and says, you know, my life's pretty much over, that's rubbish, because they have the skills to create great results very, very rapidly as well, because they just don't have that care factor, and they're quite happy to tell people no.
That's it, is that by the time you're hitting your 40s and 50s, you have a wealth of knowledge that you've gained over time that you perhaps don't have in your younger years. So there's always advantages and disadvantages to whenever you're pursuing something that you love. Now, Michael, you have so much to share with people. And I know they're going to want to dive in more and learn more about you. Where's the best place for someone to connect with you?
Our website, which is themojomaster.com.au. So that's the THE, Mojo, MOJO, master, MASTER.com.au. Or Mojo, if you just get into Google and type in Mojo Human Performance Institute, it'll come up. Also, if you search my name in any of the social media platforms or on Google, you can find me on Michael Mojo 00. So it's MICHAEL Mojo, MOJO 00. And it's the same on all social media platforms. And, you know, if anyone's got any questions or, you know, wants to let me know that they enjoyed the podcast or wants to send me death threats, social media is the place to go. Just send it on there, right? Any criticisms, feel free to hit me up on there. But no, I still manage a lot of my social media and stuff like that, so they can reach out on there. And yeah.
Well, if you're listening and you're looking at connecting with Michael, make sure you check out the show notes. I'm going to have all of his links in there. And Michael, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your story.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creator.
Life is like